So welcome to this online workshop addressing the gender gap for climate tech solutions. We know that women get less than 1% of the capital deployed, but we are innovators and we are solution makers. So we have partnered with KPMG High Growth Ventures to not just tackle this, but create some really great solutions. So thank you for turning your cameras on. This is a workshop where we'll go into breakout rooms. And before I introduce Kylie Little from KPMG High Growth Ventures, I'd like to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners on the land of which we meet. I know that will be different for everyone, but for me, that's the Gubbi Gubbi people, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Kylie, I will hand over to you. For those of you joining us who don't know about, I know I just love talking. Sorry, Kylie. Who don't know much about Climate Salad. We are a climate tech community which is founder focused. Our vision for 2030 is to help 1,000 climate tech companies scale, reach their global potential, and create 10 global successes, some green unicorns. And green unicorns isn't just $1 billion in valuation and you're doing good green stuff. It's also about the impact. It's about carbon out of the atmosphere. It's about helping 1 million people adapt, reaching 1 million customers. So we are tackling the biggest problem, biggest challenge of our time. But, and I think women are such an incredibly valuable role in that. We know that climate change more adversely affects women and minority groups. So we are uniquely positioned to innovate the solutions. I will hand over to Kylie to talk about High Growth Ventures and why we're partnering together to tackle this and to make sure there's more representation of women in this space.
Okay, thanks, Charlotte. So I guess the reason we've all ended up here, I'm a great supporter of women and of climate. So when we started working with the Climate Salad team, it was very much recognising that there was this amazing movement that Charlotte and Mick have been building, and this great momentum around what we can do for climate and how to support those emerging businesses in this space. The High Growth Ventures team is basically sort of an arm of KPMG that's really designed around supporting founders and actually helping founders grow their businesses. So we're kind of like this easy pathway to understand what KPMG services could be relevant or helpful to startups. We work with a huge range of startups and across a range of services from quite early stage through the later stage companies. I've ended up in this business largely because I'm an ex-founder. So I was a founder back in the olden days in the dot-com era. And I started a business called Essential Baby, which I sold to Fairfax in around 2007, went on and did another e-commerce startup with a venture capital firm over a couple of years, which sold back to the US parent company. So I've kind of been through this experience of the bootstrapping founder with small kids, the sort of the female going into that VC space, and kind of not quite knowing where my fit was or knowing what I was doing. And over the years, I've sort of worked with a lot of female founders and supported a lot of female founders through mentoring. And through the conversations Charlotte and I had with the way that we could work with Climate Salad, you know, the fact that there's such a strong mix of female founders in the Climate Salad community said, you know, that this is something we can sort of get back into exploring. So from a KPMG High Growth Ventures point of view, we're really interested to understand what are the things that we could do that could make a difference here. I know my experience back when I had my business was sort of had this lens of at one point, you know, small children, which kind of meant that I had a lot of questions about how I felt about taking on investment or how I felt about how I grew the business. And then over the years, you know, the sort of different experiences for me of being in, you know, largely sort of male, traditional sort of landscapes around VC. A lot of that I feel is sort of moving. I meet lots of women who are having great experiences now, and then women who are not having great experiences now. So the conversation Charlotte and I had was, you know, it would be interesting to actually try and sort of, I guess, get back to a bit of an understanding of what are people seeing, like what are people experiencing out there now, and what are those challenges? Because I kind of don't want to make assumptions about the experience I had and just the lens I'm seeing. I certainly see, you know, probably, you know, women that are a bit older that have come through this for a long time have learnt to navigate a lot of things and probably understand themselves what it takes to get cut through. But I would just love to hear more and understand more across the board of what is happening for everyone, like what's working, what's not. And just try and get to a point of where we start thinking about what are the things that we can think about differently in our day-to-day, and what's the lens we can layer over things, and are there ways that we as in our business can actually create support mechanisms or provide more support to female founders.
Thank you so much, Kylie. I've launched a poll on the challenges and expertly put choice 6 as just nothing. But if there is a challenge that you have experienced that isn't on there, I see that the popular one is that access to funding. And on a few of the calls we've had is how to even, a lot of that investor relations, building those networks happen in traditionally male settings. I mean, I think I mentioned on the golf field, shows how much I know about golf. I called it a field. Apparently it's called a golf course. And not to say that women aren't part of that area, but, or it's sort of in those clubs or areas that women aren't as involved. So I wanted to also ask you, Kylie, you said that sometimes you said no to funding because it wasn't quite right. That's a very brave move, because we're sort of, the metric for success with startups is how much capital you raise, which shouldn't be, right. It should be like the community you raise around you, the networks you build, the customers you and the impact you make. Why was it that you were sort of hesitant to take on that capital?
So I think probably the difference is when I started that business, it was a different time. It was certainly a time that, the venture capital landscape was nowhere near as advanced as it is now. There were a whole bunch of businesses starting, in that .com era, and really no one knew what they were doing. And there's probably some similarities across climate, sort of the climate space now, because there's a lot of really new sort of greenfields things that people are sort of going out and trying to create something that doesn't really exist. And that's challenging. At that time, the internet was still, a bit uncertain in terms of what it looked like and what revenue looked like in that space and what success looked like. So it was probably a strange time in terms of understanding what was the future. And so my choice was based on, and as I said, I had sort of young children. So I built an enormous community. We were the biggest audience of women online in the country. We had a hugely engaged community. And I probably had a lot of questions for myself around what control I gave up if I took on funding. So I had people offering me substantial funding, but in the back of my mind, I kind of thought, well, I don't really understand where this goes next, because everything was evolving so quickly and changing so quickly. And the means that they proposed to take on funding was very much about the sort of growth at all costs model, which is take the money, madly spend money, and fingers crossed you'll grow. So at the time, I kind of went, that doesn't work for me. I've got young kids. I actually want control over how I do this, and I'm happy to bootstrap. I'm happy to just keep growing and making it happen the way that I'm comfortable. If I look back on that now, I think if I were that person in this environment now, would I do the same thing? I'm not sure. I think there's more and different VCs out there. There are more people catering to the fact that women think differently and operate differently and probably have different business models at times. But I'm not sure. And again, that's why I'm kind of interested in this conversation, just to understand from more women out there of what they're seeing and what they're experiencing. Because then when I did go into a VC space, I did understand. So following that, I went and spent 2 years in a VC environment. CEO of a business that was run, with funding from a VC, and very much felt that sense that the VC had the right to tell me, what was and wasn't possible. So at that time, I kind of went, okay, well, this is tricky because I've done the bootstrapping, which is really, really hard, and I get how hard it is. And then I've done the model with funding, and I found elements of that quite hard as well. Again, I think it's a different landscape now. That's where it's interesting to me to see what's happening. And I should point out, one of the challenges in high growth ventures is, like the rest of the world, we're just not seeing enough females coming through. So we are seeing females come through. We have women in our high growth ventures portfolio. We're not a funding arm. We're very much about a way to sort of help founders understand what they can access in KPMG. So we absolutely have female founders in our portfolio, but not enough. So not as many as I'd like to see.
And that's why you're all on the call today, is we really want to get some actionable items out of this. Kylie isn't about, let's just talk about it. Let's actually address the issue. Raj, I know you have a question. I'm about to out into breakout rooms, but Raj, please ask.
Okay, no, I was going to share my experience, but if we're going into rooms, I can share it there.
I can go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So my name's Raj. It's really nice to meet you. I am working on carbon capture technology. So a lot of companies in the world and engineers have only focused on developing large-scale CCS technology and are only focused on capturing large emissions. So we're the first company in the world to capture small emissions. So we've developed a filter that's very affordable. It costs between $2,000 to $7,000, and it can be retrofitted to a diesel generator. And I was really struggling to raise funds. And initially, this filter can be retrofitted to households, trucks, diesel generators, like a whole range of sectors. And I was really not getting any traction with VCs and also people that I was speaking to. So what I was going to say is sometimes it's not necessarily just being a female, like maybe there's something wrong with your vision or, the business strategy. And I recently pivoted. So I realized, okay, I'm just being too general. And now I've started to focus on diesel generators only. And I changed the business name and my whole deck, like we're just focused on decarbonizing diesel generators, because I realize this sector has no competition and nothing exists to decarbonize a diesel generator, or they can't be replaced easily. And all of a sudden, I had really good traction. So like VCs are interested, not actual VCs, but angel investors. Nera, like they're interested to partner with us. I've had Third Derivative in the US. They love the change of strategy and vision, and they've said we want to work with you once you set up your pilot scale demonstration. So yeah, like people that weren't interested initially, I went back to them and now they love the new change of direction. So sometimes my point is it's maybe not just that you're a female, like maybe you need to kind of, look at your everything that's going on.
And Raj, totally agree, because what I'm seeing in the market is a lot of people that are saying we want to support female founders, we want female founders coming in. They actually want to see it. So we deal with a lot of VCs, we deal with a whole heap of different people. And sometimes what we're hearing is it's the education. It's kind of an education piece. It's not about the female piece. It's about the ability to present the information in the way that will get the cut through. And that may be the point, that it's about education. I also think at times, some women are in a spot where they're sort of getting through their way and they're finding their fun. There's a lot of people getting through and there are a lot of people making it work. It's just that there's something that's not happening that pushes that needle. There's some reason that we're not, and that may be that education is key, that men are better at the networks to get the education and understand how to do that.
And I feel like you need a few first believers. So I could have given up 6 months ago, and if I did, who knows, we have tech that can really make a huge impact and decarbonize a whole sector. And I think you just have to keep going and find someone that believes in you, because then they can start giving you that guidance as well. And you just really can't give up until you cut through. So
thank you so much for that.
Thanks.
I do want to get into breakout rooms so that we can I'll keep that poll going, because it's great to see that lack of self-belief is low, but access to funding is high, and so is access to resources as those challenges. But I'm going to get you into smaller groups to discuss what those barriers, challenges are, because as Raj said, some will be personal, that you can change on flipping your business. Some are systemic cultural issues that are going to take a collective and a whole lot of time to change, but we're making a start on that. So I'd love for you to break out into rooms. You have a few minutes to sort of discuss in these little groups what those challenges are, so that we can capture that data, because it's really important for Kylie and the ecosystem to understand what they are, so that we can address them. And that is such a great example, Raj. Thank you. But then I've heard at other companies, it's when the male co-founder pitches and not the female, then they get interest. And I hate hearing that. We need to change that. So I will, and bear with me, tech is not my forte, but I will do these breakout rooms and see how we go. And I will sign. There we go. Oh, is 5 too many in a group? I think that's okay. All right. And hopefully you're all going into groups, into breakout rooms.
Sorry, I'm back.
No, that's okay. Where have I got you? Melina, I think. Would you, I wonder how I assign you to a room. Or maybe we can just sort of talk about it.
Yeah, we can chat about that. That would be great.
Yeah, tell me what do you find? Or what, I don't know if I've met you before, Melina.
I don't think we met before. I actually joined Australis in August this year. So prior to that, I've spent 20 years in financial services, more banking and insurance. So it's interesting for me to see the challenges that females face in VC space, in startup space, because coming from banking, breaking the ceiling and increasing diversity has always been a challenge. And when we look at, let's say, 40% of female participation or female in leadership, it sounded like, hey, we're not there, we're not equal. But when I look at the amount of funding that females get, I can see that the challenge in VC space and in startups is a completely different level. It's a real problem. So I don't think I can contribute to the challenges just yet. I'm entrepreneur in residence for Australis. So I'm trying to advise them on some of their ventures and help them.
Australis, the makeup and beauty brand?
No, it's a boutique VC group.
Oh, right. Okay. So they have 40% of their portfolio are female founders.
No, I was giving you examples from my banking days, from financial services, where we always used to say that there is a problem in financial sector, but when you compare it to VC, they're very lucky the way they're operating. Yeah. So I think it's just interesting to listen to the girls, and definitely the research shows that we do communicate differently. And I think that's where the barrier is females do communicate very different to male, and maybe we're just not hitting the right notes or the right tone of voice for them to really get passionate about what we do.
There's a lot of unconscious bias though, and it's sometimes, it even, like, it doesn't matter, the content of what a female founder says or how they say it. There's just an automatic bias to start with, as in, she's got a family, she'll look after them more, or I don't see many successful female founders. So am I, am I going to get a 10x return on this? Like, what have you found being advising Australis? What have you found, that is there just not enough women coming past their desks?
Yeah, there are not enough women. There are not enough women in STEM. They, I think, also maybe they're not generating interest because women, with quite a few of us, tend to look at certainty. They want certainty and they want to make sure that there is security. And maybe it's a stage of life also. When your kids grow up, then you feel a little bit free to be able to take on those risks. So maybe they're not pitching to the right group of females as well.
And is that I've heard that come up before, that we need to get more females, the lack of investment in female founders is like that double-edged sword of, like, there aren't enough female investors.
Exactly. So there are not enough female investors, and then if there were investors in the room, female, they would be asking different questions, they would be reacting differently. to females. So I think the change needs to be driven from the top, where you get more women in investment committees, you get more women in VCs, you get more women in private equities, and then they will make a change because they will be able to look at startups founded by females a little bit differently because they get them.
Absolutely. I mean, and even just like for a woman to be on the investment side, there's barriers, like to be a sophisticated angel investor, you know, that you've got to be earning a certain amount of money, have a certain amount of assets, and traditionally that's mostly men. So, so that's interesting.
Okay.
No, thank you so much. Let me send a message and just say we will be coming back. I think I can do that here. Broadcast message. One more minute before we come back. So with your insurance and financial background, I'm imagining you wouldn't have a whole lot of other women in that sector when you're working in it.
Well, I've spent 20 years. So at the beginning, early days, yeah, we were very outnumbered. But I think over time, there are more and more females in leadership, as well as more females execs. There is a strong focus on creating that diversity and equality because it gets measured. Because there are processes in place to be able to measure and report. There are also KPIs for leaders and execs to recruit females and create that diversity. So I think they started to work on that probably a good 5-7 years ago. And only now you can see some improvements, really, because it is talked about. It's not just talked about, but it's also measured.
I think that is so important. So even though you just said you couldn't contribute much, you have, because we do need more women at the top in investment so that they can, and in part of investment committees, so they react differently. They can see, you know, talk to the founder on a different level, but also what you've experienced in the finance sector, that strong focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and having KPIs around that on creating diversity. Yeah, it takes time, but it's
measuring it on a quarterly basis.
Yeah. I know.
And also benchmarking to peers is very important, because then you can actually not fame and shame, but you can give everyone a line in the ground to say, this is where you stand today, this is where your competitors are, and this is what you need to focus on to be able to get there and improve.
Close all rooms now and bring everyone back in. I think that's so important. I mean, it takes time, but yeah, benchmarking against peers and then asking that question, like, why haven't you made a female hire?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome back. Thanks, everyone. First time using breakout rooms, so we'll see how we go. Yay. Hope it worked well. Okay, good. So, Kimberly or Joanna, or I'm assuming you're from the same table or break room and Sirat. I'll wait till a few more. They must be really winding down that last 60 seconds. Well, I'll wait till everyone joins, and then it'll be great to report back. Melina and I had a great conversation about some of the challenges, even though you didn't think you'd be able to address, come up with some of them, but even, and typical of women, we started working on solutions, and that's your second breakout room, but that's fine if you started tackling solutions. Who would like to volunteer to sort of report on what their breakout room had uncovered?
I can go if no one's going, but basically,
yeah. So, okay, go Raj.
Yeah. It's I think the main thing was just we feel like men ask us different questions to what they would ask males when vetting the business. Also, one thing I've found, if you have kids and you're a mum, I feel like a lot of men don't think you're capable of running a business. Like, it's pretty clear. They kind of look at you differently. yeah, that's two main points that we had.
Charlotte, do you want me to? I can go. So Finn and I were just a room of two, but we sort of took what your comment about having a man in the room in the team and how the dynamics changed, and we were both reflecting that that's happened to us. Like my other co-founder is female. You know, we do a great show. We're incredibly smart. We can do techno-economic modeling, financials, but I don't have a business background. I finally got a CFO who's male, bring him in the room. He doesn't have to say anything. All of a sudden, the questions about the business commercial side have just disappeared. And I think Finn said, you've got very similar experience. You've got men that have done the work even, but if they're not in that room, it's just questioned.
How interesting. So it's like there's no unconscious bias, or there is unconscious bias, like, oh, they've got a man. So
yeah, who's validated what these, but maybe look, we don't know. I mean, that's the other challenge is, it's such an individual personal experience to raise capital. We don't know what it looks like from a male's perspective in a similar, just knocked my water bottle over, what it looks like, if they're in a similar situation, are they getting the same questions? And this is what I'm curious to hear, what if Kylie feels that is the case, just the questioning, is it different? Or do we take it down the wrong path? Do we try and, provide too much information, too much detail, instead of just saying, this is how it is, this is what we'll take, and we move on?
I think there is actually data that backs up the point to say that men, like they have in the past been asking different questions. They have this unconscious bias, like maybe conscious bias for some, but increasingly I've found male VCs saying to me, I don't understand, like I've sort of told them about that experience I had and some of the challenges and the fact that we probably need active change to make a difference here. And they will say to me, oh no, we want to see it change. Like we actually want, we want more females coming through. We understand the value of more females coming through. But again, they don't know that they've been in this industry forever. They're generally in a room full of men. And they're sort of caught up in that bias. I think it's hard for them to catch themselves out when they're seeing, 100 investments a week. So I also get that the challenge is not necessarily, some guy sitting there going, I'm just going to ignore women. It's like, I think it's a very complex challenge. But interesting, like, the women that have gotten behind Win VC are very much about addressing this on the investment side by saying, let's develop female VCs in this space and give them a better path into that VC landscape so that you've got more women in the room. Because we all know that when you get more women in the room, or just get more diversity in the room, so not just male, female, but, multiple forms of diversity, then you get better decisions, you get more interesting outcomes. So everyone knows that. I mean, most men you speak to will say they know that, but they don't know how to get more female VCs in. So in the same way that they don't quite know how to get the female founders through, because, to your point, Raj, about having children, like in the back of their mind, they're thinking, for a lot of them, well, my wife is at home looking after kids and I know how big a job that is. So there isn't a bias there for them, for some of them, going that, I don't know how you could run it. Like there is a bias there that they're probably not addressing. So I think there's a piece which is, it's not necessarily about them trying to do the wrong thing. It's absolutely about, like, I just think there's a lot of education here of like, doing that education while that sort of female VC movement's coming through to try and get more women in the room, because more women in the room will change it. Like more women that are willing to put up their hand and say, hang on guys, you're not asking particular questions, having them be aware. I've heard a number of them talking about how they're really doing more work on their own investment groups to really be aware of those biases. So
I'll just stop you there for a second, Kylie, just to go around the room to find, is that okay, Rash? We'll just go around to hear what everyone else said, because that actually was something where we not enough women VCs and the questions are different. So yeah, we need more women on that side. Joe, did you have your hand up before to sort of report back on your room?
Yeah, we didn't go into the sort of male female contrast with. We just really spoke about the mental health side of being a startup founder, where it's very difficult to gauge whether you're working hard, and it's difficult to gauge if you're actually making progress. And that can include when you're speaking with investors as well. They're not going to come back to you and say, well, we didn't invest because you're female. They're not going to say that. It's going to be everything but that. So the idea is to it's really good having a community like Climate Salad where you can actually hear other people going through the same sorts of things. So I know that's getting into solution side of it, but yeah, it was just about really looking after and recognizing the fact that we do need to manage mental health, keep us going.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I think that should be top of the list for all founders, because it's a really, really hard path. Yeah.
Was there another breakout room? I'm sure there was, that would like to report back on the challenges that you
I was in one, but I don't think I should do the talking.
You can go for it. I can go for it. I think that the kind of most relevant to this conversation was a point that Ali's made around what happens after the pitch, and that if we're kind of talking about the differences in gender, and that it's men seem to outperform when we actually get to conversion and sales, and they've got kind of probably just, it comes from an education, to Kylie's point, and more training throughout their careers, that they are able to kind of follow up with that conversion. Whereas a lot of the kind of accelerator programs, to Ali's point, were focusing on the pitch deck, the presentation, getting that kind of really tight. But then what about what happens after and actually bringing in the cash?
Yes, I love that point. I'm just going to jump in, but I've just, there's some really interesting theories around that network piece that males typically have. So females, to your point, we put all this prep into the deck, making sure everything's right, not necessarily perfect, but so diligent. And then after that pitch, what males probably have is they've developed that relationship the whole way through. So often females are like, I need a purpose to develop this relationship. Whereas with males, I think they just develop it. They'll be like, hey, let's go and hit some golf or whatever, let's go have a few beers without a reason. And if they do that, when they have those conversations after the pitch or whatever it is, they've already got that relationship to make that decision. And I think that plays into it a lot. And that's something that I really struggle with, because I'm like, how those networks are ingrained. How do you break through those? Because I think there's capital out there, there's amazing female businesses, like we're all sitting on this call, but how do you integrate those networks? That's what I'm struggling with.
And just a really quick, I'm going rogue here, but Charlotte, just throw a question in. So one of the things that we've found has been interesting is just that piece about the fact that women will set targets. They will create targets or create a model or show what they're going to do, and they will make that achievable. And so I know VCs that will actually turn around and say to women, you have to up your targets. Whereas with men, they'll be saying, hey, mate, lower your targets. So the men are more likely willing to go in and just overinflate and say they're going to take over the world. Whereas women are going to say, I'm going to do the thing that I know that I can achieve. Do people agree with that or not agree with that? Is that the experience?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I would never promise something that I feel like I can't deliver.
And interestingly, VCs are expecting that if you say that that's what you're going to deliver, they think you're going to hit below that. So again, this is this piece about understanding how they think. How the way they think is, show me a target, there's a good story behind it, kind of seems achievable. I understand the background, I understand the story, I understand what all this means. But they don't, early stage especially, they don't necessarily expect you're going to hit that target, but they want to see that you've got a path to sort of towards that target. Generally, they think you're probably going to hit under. So if you're showing something that's actually achievable, they think you're going to go lower. And so I've met with a female VC who actually said, oh, I go back and tell all the females I work with, increase your targets, like your targets, like you're actually sort of, you're lowballing yourself. And you're up against people who highball themselves, which is, again, this education piece around how those VCs operate.
And I just wanted to add, I always go higher, so yeah. And I think you always have to show that you'll overachieve instead of being modest, because that's what they're looking for. Yeah. And another thing is I previously co-founded an infant formula company, and it's actually listing on the stock market next year, and I've raised a lot of funds for that, but each business is different. And like, for example, I'm now in climate tech and I only want to raise through climate investors. Like, I don't want to rely on different networks that can't really help in this space. So it's just all about relationships. And instead of just being focused on raising funds, maybe first go build relationships before you raise the funds, because it's like not fun for anyone. And so I think that's a good way too.
Yeah.
I can't believe that comment. I just saw that Tina was that your comment? But it's like, yeah, females, the company's not bankable with a female as a CEO.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in a co-founder who is a mother.
I know. And literally, so they were previous Antler. They went through the Antler system, and there were comments that were made to them personally, like by other male co-founders in the cohort, literally said it. And some of the teams ended up breaking up on account of it. But yeah, not ideal.
No.
I've had a conversation where, talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and I'm such a champion in that area. And then the conversation sort of floated to a particular founder who's amazing, isn't she incredible? But she's pregnant, so can't invest with her anymore. I'm like, you literally just said the other part before. Like, I wish I had a recorder.
And then the important thing is that there are VCs, investors, like various investors out there who will say, I trust that if a woman is pregnant, if a woman has a family and she says she can do this, then that's up to her. So the other thing is, in this landscape, there are people doing good things. And I always want to make sure that there's a balance there, because that it's not sort of like everyone's doing the wrong thing, because I do think it's shifting. And like with a bit of a sort of a push, what are the things we could do to help that shift? Rather than kind of going, it's all bad. What are the messages that we could get out there that could say, actually, if we push a bit harder, or when we're dealing with VCs, if we can get this message into VCs a bit more, can we get them sort of listening up a bit more? They're saying they want to change, so let's give them some things to think about in terms of what they could do differently. Because that's the stuff I'm interested in, is how do we just keep sort of moving that dial? Because this stuff takes time, but what are the things we can do that push it along?
Which is a perfect segue. I was going to say that's a perfect segue into going to the breakout rooms to talk about solutions. But Tina, did you want to?
Yeah, I've just got to duck off, but I will say that I feel like there is so much talk around the negative statistics associated with raising capital, and it makes you feel like it's less achievable as a female founder, and B, it gets in the heads of the VCs and other potential male co-founders, and it's a disincentive to team up with someone who's a female founder. So I feel like we just need to stop talking about the statistics.
Start celebrating. I mean, Canva, the big unicorn of Australia, we keep celebrating female founder.
And the one thing I'll quickly say to that, Tina, before you have to run off, is that the way the landscape's moved, the funding landscape's moved, everything we're hearing from VCs is this move from sort of growth at all costs, let's chuck money your way, you'll just run 1,000,000 miles an hour and do whatever you want, and we won't worry about the fundamentals. They've actually asked us to put together an education program for founders to get them sort of more financially literate, to get them back to basics, to get them more disciplined, to help their founders get more of those foundation elements for running a business with discipline and with an understanding of how to drive that business forward. Females, women are perfectly positioned for that, as opposed to the give me, $100 million and I'll go and spend it and let's see. So I think there's a piece in this new landscape coming through that's actually it's on our side. Like, it's actually on your side, because there's a sense that if women say they're going to do something, they're going to go and do it. So I actually think you're coming into a market and an industry that is on your side in many ways, if you leverage that the right way. And then we've got to push the dial on the other side with those sort of, especially the all-male investor groups. There's certainly plenty of women, not plenty, but there's women in there. But how do we start getting them to be more aware of some of this stuff as well?
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
I'm sorry you can't join the breakout rooms for the solutions, but I do want to, let's focus on these solutions, which I think we all sort of started to talk about in our groups already. We started tackling those solutions. So in this breakout room, if you can sort of think about those solutions, what can we do? What do you need to succeed? What can KPMG High Growth Ventures and Climate Salad do to help you unlock that? So I will get you into breakout rooms and see you soon. Hi. I feel like, did I close the rooms too soon? Do you want more time? Or is it okay? I love that the solutions took longer. I love that everyone was like, we are solution focused. This is what I love about this community. Who would like to talk about the solutions that you uncovered? Finn, Fionnuala, Sally, yes. So go Finn and then Sally.
Hi. Yeah. So I had another great chat with Louise, and probably a little controversial given the comments by Kylie, which I do think there's constant education that we need to go through. But I've sort of become increasingly frustrated with the fact that my experience in Australia over the last 2 years is there's no funding for women. There's no grants that aren't matched dollar for dollar, so you need millions to get millions. But also, the only support we seem to be able to access is education, is mentorship, is advisors. It's very condescending. And I've mentioned this overseas too, because I've just come back from an international accelerator, and they're gobsmacked that that's the only support that you can access here. I'm sort of like, trust us with the money, and we can bring in that capability around us in a team, because why do we need to be a CFO, a CTO, a business sales exec? I know that's the job of a founder for some time, but they expect you to be that before they'll give you a cent, all of those things.
And Finn, one of the things that I'm alluding to is the education in the investment community, well. Like, no, I'm definitely talking about education in the investment community, as well as an element across founders. But that actually happens across all founders. That's not just women. So I'm actually not trying to be condescending towards women, because we.
Oh, not you. Sorry, not you. No, the system.
The system. And we also work with a lot of male founders. And again, what we've had is VCs. They asked us to build this program because they've got all these founders, and they said they just need more education. They're not willing to put up their hand and say they need the education. So it's kind of like we're doing this sideways thing, because the VCs are saying they see everyone needs more education.
Yeah.
You know, like, so they want that education.
I think it's both, to be fair.
And we need to educate them.
Give us funding and education.
Yeah, exactly.
But not only education.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. Sorry, that's my rant over.
Good rant. Oh, you're mute, Charlotte.
And I said something really clever too.
Oh, I bet you did. Yeah.
Education doesn't, pay the bills, but it really does help. But absolutely. And I know Kylie has been going on about that. We need a huge piece on the investment side. Sally, did you want to report back on those solutions?
Yeah, sure. Probably 3 key things that I heard now on. So the first one is getting some more recommendations or tips around how to go into the process, and things perhaps that females may inherently do differently to men, or could really help, whether it is aiming higher, inflating numbers, whatever it might be. The second thing around, telling more stories of when funding does work. And so different types of businesses, types of female-led startups, industries, especially more sort of female-focused industries, female customers, understanding where that has worked in case studies and, the funders that responded. And then we started having quite an interesting debate as time was wrapping up. So we had some saying that we perhaps, need to be more like men and, interact more in that way. And then we had some counterpoints. So I might pass it off to the group if anyone else wanted to jump in on that.
I'm going to say we shouldn't be more like men. But anyway, I wasn't in the group.
Would anyone like to enlighten us? And I have heard this before in, different female founder forums of like, be like a man. It's like, actually just like lean into your feminine attributes, which are freaking awesome, but maybe they're not as valued. So we need to educate the audience on being more valuing those female attributes.
I'm the one that said that because I just realized in my last startup, if I was being soft, and kind, it gets you nowhere. So I just kind of had to be like the men I was working with, and then be on their level, and then they kind of respect you more if you stand up for yourself. And so
and isn't that interesting, because Cara was like, men do well in that conversion because they build those relationships, and traditionally women have those softer skills and men don't. But then you'd think the softer skills are those people skills that are so inherent in your success. Cara, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was the challenger, but I just said, I think it just needs to be diversity of thought. So whether that's, male, female, whatever, just diversity of thought in the room, you'll get a better outcome, I think was my point on that. So, and I think if your style is to be like a man, then fine, be like a man, and that's okay. But I think, we can learn some of those tactics that men use, but I think just you need to have your authentic self there and be whatever that is.
Yeah, authentic. I think that's the key, isn't it? Who else would like to contribute the solutions that you came up with?
I just want to hop on to that point, and I want to share that, like, when I've been doing my pitching and whatnot, I've tried doing different pitching styles for very similar audiences and different outfits and whatnot. And I found that actually, when I hammed up I'm a young blonde female sort of in my pitch and just owned that, I actually got a much better response across the board from females and men in the audience. The feminist inside me kind of it doesn't know how to sit with that, but from my experience, just, being authentic and almost playing up what you are and owning what you are really worked for me.
And that's probably what you were doing, Raj, when you were like thinking like the man, you were like really owning it,
Yeah. And I just had one more point to add that would be helpful, I think, for the community. If you guys could create like a cheat sheet and just put it up somewhere, like on Slack, like for women, just like that tip about increasing your revenue on your pitch deck. That's a really good tip. And actually, someone told that to me just last week in our community when I was preparing for the StartMate interview, because I was chasing 1% of our market, and he said to me, chase 5. I said, well, 5's a lot. Like even Tesla hasn't hit 5. And he said, yeah, it doesn't matter because you're not going to achieve 5. You're just chasing 5. So women don't know that because women will put down what they think is realistic, right? So
I think because women do what they say they're going to do. Like inherently, there's a thing where we kind of go, I say I'm going to do that, so I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's that. And look, not everyone does it. There's people out there that won't be doing this, but like I think there is a natural tendency to kind of go, well, I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah, I'm just going to inflate the numbers a bit. Yeah. But that is good. And then there's, everyone says, like, when the man says it, you divide it by 10. When the woman says it, you probably multiply by 10 because they're going to underestimate themselves. And so maybe there's like, little biases going on there when the numbers come out. Yeah. So then if you do inflate the numbers, they're like, wow, that's really impressive because women don't usually. Is there other solutions that you would like to add to this? This has been really enlightening, and thank you so much. And it echoes a lot of the conversations that we've been having, but it's really great to capture this all. And I will definitely be sharing just a sort of, I think we're aware of the challenges, but sharing those solutions that we want to tackle and work on together. But is there someone else who'd like to share a solution that came up? Yes, Finn.
Hi. I just wanted to add something that I've come across recently. I get a lot of male advisors telling me, not really listening to what my business is, but also giving advice in terms of you need to focus on that one thing. And there's a real methodology in terms of their history of startup, experience with male founded startups, and it's nail that problem. There's a metric to all of it, and anything outside of that is irrelevant. And so focus down to the molecule. And I get a lot of negative feedback around what they perceive as lack of focus, which is actually a female attribute that I've seen in other female founders that makes us incredibly successful at holistic thinking and looking at the ecosystem around our solution and understanding that there's causes and effects and there's a value chain involved with what we're bringing into market. So building that network around that is actually safeguarding and de-risking my part in that value chain, because I've looked at supply, I've looked at end of life, I've looked at the ecosystem that you're operating in and the local environment. And these are things that men won't look at. They'll go, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to achieve this metric and make this much money. And that's all I need to focus on. So I see it as a huge positive rather than a weakness that I'm told it is a weakness. Yeah.
So maybe one of the solutions is that reframing of that holistic thinking as opposed to not focusing on the detail. We only have a couple of minutes left, and I know you have to drop off. I'd love a group shot. As with Climate Salad Calls, we love to do this because, you know, you saw, don't worry, Kim, you look amazing. Because you saw it here first, like we are tackling these solutions, and this is what women do. Like this is how we get it done. Sima, it's so lovely to see you on here. So
lovely to see you too.
When I was taking screenshots, it was of the polls. So if everyone can, I don't know, what's a hand gesture we can do? Whatever you like, or smiling. Okay, I'll take it. Thank you so much. Are there any final comments, questions? Thank you. This has all been incredibly insightful. So thank you so much for your time and your contribution to this.
I was just going to say, I found this really, really valuable because it's interesting. Like one of the nice things about being in this sort of KPMG world is you start getting access to people that are talking to people in government, doing all these different things. So it's kind of nice that you can actually start going and talking to people to kind of go like, what could happen here? Like, where are some smart people that could get engaged to make something happen here? So that's kind of exciting for me, like coming from mostly a world of startups and founders where you just don't have access to resource and all of these people. That's part of the reason this is interesting to me, is because I feel like I can go and talk to some people in here and say, like, what could happen? Like, what could we do? Where could we start exploring? And then we have access to people in that VC world as well to think about that. And again, that elevating females that have had success, that's something that we've actually talked about in our team of like, how do we do more of that? How do we use our network to really make sure that we're really like highlighting women and making that more visible? Yeah. And sorry, I just interrupted someone who was about to speak.
Yeah, but absolutely. We want to Google women founders and see the wonderful statistics, the wonderful stories, not the upsetting ones. Sima, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just saying, and we touched it in the breakout room, that there is an authentic storytelling piece for female founders that's so important. Like, how do you bring yourself to the table? How do you not undersell? Like, I thought I was the only one doing that, but it's just so comforting to know that this is a shared experience and there are ways of combating it. And what does even being authentic to yourself and your business mean when you're raising funds? So yeah, and there are more than one ways to do it, right or wrong.
Completely. And to that point, Simo, sometimes actually just being aware of that, like just being aware that you may be underselling yourself, is a good first sort of action to kind of go like spot yourself doing it. And like, at least when you're spotting yourself doing it, you kind of know to pull yourself up on that. Like, it's some of it is just your own awareness of, am I doing some of these things, which we all have throughout our lives anyway. Like, it's like, you know, what are the things that possibly might be holding me back? So some of this stuff is about understanding it so that you can think about how you change that. And then there's a whole lot of it that's about, you know, the system has to change, like the world has to change, like there's things that need to be done. But the awareness is key.
Thank you so much for your time. Please do send me your company profiles, because I'd love to profile all your amazing solutions. And Raj, you know, like world first with the carbon capture. I know that's, when we were in the States recently, that was something that everybody's so interested in, the carbon capture part.
And thanks for organising this. And I just wanted to say, today opened my eyes up, because I've actually never thought about, like, how would a male do this? Or when, like, if a male's going to pitch my business, like, it never crossed my mind that they would pitch it so differently. And that's something that we can all keep in mind while this change is happening, just so we can keep getting ahead, right?
And Raj, that is absolutely awesome, Raj. And I think there's probably others that would be in the same boat as you, that have just sort of gone through and it's worked and haven't thought about it. But then for some people, there is this bias that actually sort of impacts. And so some of it is kind of figuring out where are those things that we can think about and understand, and where are the things that we can take it into the world and try and like bring that change.
Thank you so much. I'll share the sort of the findings that we've uncovered today, because I just love all these different solutions. But I'll share it with you because there might be something that I haven't articulated as best as possible and you can probably improve on. But thank you so much. Keep building, keep working on your solutions. We need them and we need you to be successful, because I want to live in that world where you're all widely successful. Thank you so much for your time.
Nice